Beloved, hear me today. There are moments in life when every door looks shut. Every path seems blocked and every prayer you've prayed feels like it's echoing back in silence. But this morning, I came to remind you of something powerful. When God is your source, a closed door is never the end of the story. You may be standing in front of something that looks immovable, unshakable, impossible. But heaven has a pattern. Doors don't open for the strongest or the loudest. They open for the ones who refuse to stop praying. Prayer is your access point. Prayer is your God-given key. Prayer is the force that knocks on the impossible until the impossible gets tired and becomes possible. Every time you pray, you are turning the handle of a door that looks locked. Every time you pray, you are pushing back against darkness that wants you to quit. Every time you pray, you are announcing to the enemy, I may be waiting, but I'm not defeated. Some of you have prayed once and walked away. Some have prayed twice and grew weary. But today, this morning, you are being called to pray until the door opens. Not pray until you feel better. Not pray until you get tired. Not pray until circumstances look like they're changing. Pray until the door opens, because the God you pray to is a God who hears, a God who answers, a God who moves in the unseen long before you see anything in the natural. You don't have a silent heaven. You have a strategic heaven. You're not ignored. You are being prepared. That delay, it's not denial. That closed door, it's not rejection. That waiting season is not punishment. It is heaven rearranging the hallway so that when your door opens, it opens to the right blessing, the right timing, the right opportunity, one that will not crush you, confuse you, or cut you off from your purpose. So rise up this morning with faith in your heart. Let your knees hit the ground and let your prayers shake the heavens. You have a God who splits seas, who breaks chains, who shuts the mouth of lions, who opens prison doors. And he has not forgotten how to open doors for you. This is your moment to pray again. Pray with fire. Pray with expectation. Pray with boldness. Pray as if the door is already unlocking on the other side, because it is. And when that door swings open, it will be so clear, so undeniable, so supernatural that you will know without question it was prayer that brought you through. When you come face to face with a closed door, everything in you may want to give up, step back, or assume that the season is over. But listen closely. This is where powerful faith begins. Closed doors are not final. Closed doors are not God abandoning you. Closed doors are not the end of your story. They are temporary setups preparing the pathway to a breakthrough you can't yet see. What if the door isn't denying you? What if it's protecting you? What if the delay is actually the shield that keeps you from stepping into something too small, too early, or too dangerous for where God is taking you? There are doors in life that look like they'll never move. The job you prayed for that hasn't arrived, the healing you believed for that hasn't manifested. The relationship you hoped would open, but instead closed tighter. But these are the moments where your mindset has to shift. This is where you must remind yourself, heaven doesn't operate on human timelines or human limitations. What looks like a permanent no may simply be a divine not yet. What feels like rejection may actually be redirection. What seems like a closed path may be a rerouting to a higher blessing. Think about this. Some doors don't open because they were never meant for you. Some doors don't open because they're too small for what God wants to do through you. Some doors don't open because they lead to battles you're not called to fight. And some doors don't open yet because God is still preparing what's on the other side. If he allowed you to walk through that door too soon, you might not be equipped, mature, or spiritually grounded enough to handle what's waiting. God is not just preparing the blessing, he's preparing you for the blessing. This is why you can't panic when a door doesn't open. Closed doors are divine conversations. Closed doors are spiritual signals. Closed doors are reminders that God has a wider view of your life than you do. While you see one step ahead, he sees 10 years ahead. While you see disappointment, he sees development. While you feel blocked, he sees you being built. And here's the hook that changes everything. What if the very door you're crying over is too low for the level God is lifting you to? What if the closed door is God's way of saying, I have something bigger, but you're aiming too small? What if the frustration you feel right now is actually preparation for a breakthrough that requires a stronger, wiser, more focused version of you? You see, sometimes God closes doors to push you into deeper prayer. Sometimes he closes doors to pull you away from distractions. Sometimes he closes doors to protect you from opportunities that look good, but would drain your spirit, your peace, or your purpose. And sometimes those closed doors are simply pauses, delays that stretch you enough to transform you into someone who can carry more. And don't miss this. Closed doors often mean movement behind the scenes. Just because you see no activity doesn't mean God isn't working. Heaven does its greatest work when earth sees nothing happening. God rearranges people, shifts circumstances, realigns paths, and prepares opportunities in silence. And when everything is positioned perfectly, that same closed door will suddenly swing wide open, not because of your strength, but because of God's strategy. So the next time you face a closed door, don't collapse under discouragement. Don't assume your story ends here. Instead, lean in. Pay attention, pray deeper. Expect greater. Because if God allowed that door to stay shut, it's only because he's getting ready to open one that is wider, stronger, safer, and far more aligned with your destiny than the one you were standing at. Prayer is not a routine, a ritual, or a quiet whisper you send into the air hoping something changes. Prayer is a spiritual force. Prayer is a weapon. Prayer is access. Prayer is the key that unlocks what your strength, your connections, and your strategies could never accomplish. When you pray, you're not just speaking, you're activating something powerful in the unseen realm. You're shaking foundations you cannot see with your eyes. You're pushing against walls that look immovable. You're knocking on doors that seem locked. And with every prayer, something shifts, something weakens, something cracks. Some people underestimate prayer because they can't see immediate results. They think silence means inactivity. They think delay means nothing is happening. But prayer works long before you see anything change. Just because the door hasn't opened yet doesn't mean your prayers aren't turning the handle. Prayer doesn't always provide instant outcomes, but it always produces invisible movement. Here's the truth you can't afford to miss. Prayer turns impossible situations into possible realities. It goes where your physical hands cannot reach. It travels into conversations you're not present for. It influences hearts you cannot touch. It rearranges circumstances you don't even know need rearranging. Prayer enters boardrooms you've never stepped into. Prayer softens minds that were once closed. Prayer prepares opportunities before they ever appear. And here's a hook that should grab your spirit. What if the only thing standing between you and an open door is one more prayer? What if the breakthrough didn't require 10 steps, a strategy, or a perfect plan? Just a persistent voice refusing to back down. What if what looks like resistance is actually the final moment before the door swings wide? When you pray, you are not begging, you are partnering. You are stepping into alignment with heaven's will. You're saying, I can't do this alone. But with God, nothing is impossible. That kind of prayer carries weight. That kind of prayer moves mountains. That kind of prayer announces to every obstacle, you will not stop me. Prayer builds pressure against whatever is blocking your path. Imagine a locked door with pressure building from the other side. Each prayer is a push. Each prayer is a strike. Each prayer is a spiritual knock that grows louder and louder until the door cannot withstand it anymore. Eventually, what resisted you will open for you, not because it got weaker, but because your prayer got stronger. But this is where many people miss it. They pray once, get discouraged, and walk away. They pray twice, see no sign, and assume nothing's happening. They pray for a season and then stop because the door still looks closed. What they don't realize is that prayer is cumulative. Every prayer stacks on top of the last one. Every prayer compounds spiritual pressure. Every prayer builds momentum. And here comes another hook you need to tuck into your heart. What if the breakthrough didn't happen because you stopped one prayer too soon? What if the blessing was already on the way, but your silence paused the process? What if heaven was waiting for your persistence, not your perfection? Prayer is not passive. Prayer is not weak. Prayer is not a last resort. Prayer is the strategy of the strong. Prayer is the move of the bold. Prayer is the posture of the victorious. It is the act of saying, I know what I see, but I also know what God can do. When you pray, you invite divine intervention. You release angels into assignment. You push back darkness. You declare spiritual authority. You step into a realm where natural laws bow to supernatural power. You might not feel anything in the moment, but heaven is stirred, chains begin to loosen, and doors begin to respond. So keep praying. Not because you're powerless, but because prayer makes you powerful. Every word lifted in faith is another turn of the key, another shake of the lock, another push against the barrier. And sooner than you think, what once stood in your way will give way. Not by chance, but because prayer made the impossible possible. There are blessings you are praying for right now that require a stronger, wiser, more spiritually grounded version of you to receive them. Persistence in prayer is not just about getting an answer. It is about becoming the kind of person who can carry the answer. There are breakthroughs that would overwhelm you if they arrive too early. There are opportunities that would crush you if you stepped into them unprepared. That is why persistent prayer is not punishment. It is preparation. Every time you pray, you are being shaped. Every time you pray, you are being stretched. Every time you pray, you are being strengthened for the very thing you're asking God for. Some people think unanswered prayers mean God is ignoring them, but they don't realize something deeper. God is working on them while he works on the blessing. You're not just waiting for a door to open. Sometimes the door is waiting for you to mature, to grow, to develop the character, the discipline, and the resilience needed to walk through it. Prayer is the gym of your spirit. Prayer trains your faith, sharpens your vision, and builds spiritual muscle you didn't know you needed. And here's a hook that will shift your entire perspective. What if the delay is not withholding your blessing, but building your capacity to hold it? You may be praying for a promotion, but God needs to strengthen your leadership. You may be praying for a relationship, but God needs to heal your emotional patterns. You may be praying for a breakthrough, but God needs to fortify your endurance. The blessing isn't the problem. Your readiness is. Persistent prayer develops you in ways comfort never will. It teaches you patience when everything in you wants to rush. It teaches you trust when you don't understand the timing. It teaches you focus when distractions pull at you from every direction. It teaches you endurance when the journey feels longer than expected. Every prayer you pray stretches your faith a little more, strengthens your emotional foundation a little more, and deepens your spiritual maturity a little more. And here's another hook to grab your heart. What if the reason God hasn't opened the door yet is because he's building you into the person who will dominate on the other side? Breakthrough without maturity leads to breakdown. Blessings without preparation lead to burdens. Elevation without grounding leads to collapse. This is why persistent prayer matters. It doesn't just move heaven, it moves you. It shifts your attitude. It adjusts your mindset. It aligns your desires. It breaks off old habits. It exposes weaknesses. It reveals blind spots. It cleanses motives. It equips you for the next level. Think about it. Every powerful person you admire, every faith-filled leader you respect, every champion of purpose you've ever been inspired by, none of them became who they are without pressure, persistence, and spiritual training. Persistent prayer is God's way of stretching your capacity for greatness. You're not praying just for something to happen. You're praying so you can become someone who can handle what's coming. Sometimes the blessing is big, but you're still thinking small. Sometimes the opportunity is heavy, but your character still needs strengthening. Sometimes the next season is powerful, but your faith still needs sharpening. Persistent prayer builds the inner foundation that can carry outer favor. And don't miss this. Prayer doesn't just change your situation. It changes your posture in the situation. It gives you stability while you wait, clarity while you seek, peace while you push, and confidence while the door remains closed. You're not pacing the hallway in fear, you're pacing it in preparation. So when you keep praying, even when you're tired, when you keep praying, even when you don't see signs, when you keep praying, even when discouragement whispers give up, what you're really doing is growing into the version of yourself that can manage, sustain, protect, and multiply the blessing when it finally arrives. There are moments in your journey when everything seems paused, slowed down, or held in place. You pray, you believe, you stand in faith, but nothing seems to move. And in those moments, it's easy to feel forgotten or overlooked. But here is a truth that will anchor your spirit. Delays are not denials. They are divine timing adjustments orchestrated with precision by a God who sees what you cannot see. When God delays something, He is not punishing you. He is positioning you. He is aligning people, preparing circumstances, and shaping outcomes so that when the door finally opens, it opens into the right environment, at the right moment, with the right opportunity waiting on the other side. Sometimes the very thing you are praying for is ready, but the timing around it is not. You might be prepared, but the situation isn't. Or the situation might be ready, but you are not. Delay is the space where God brings these two timelines into harmony. It's where heaven synchronizes everything connected to your blessing so that when it arrives complete. Not premature, not unstable, not half-formed, but perfect and fully aligned. And here's a hook that should stir your heart. What if the delay you're frustrated about is actually protecting you from the disaster you can't see yet? What if the job that didn't call you back would have drained your peace? What if the relationship that didn't work out would have derailed your destiny? What if the opportunity that fell through would have locked you into something too small for your future? Delay often feels cruel in the moment, but it's a mercy in disguise. God delays what would distract you. He delays what would destroy you. He delays what would detour you. And He delays what is not aligned with the destiny He has assigned to your life. If God says wait, it is because He has seen something you have not. His vision is beyond your horizon. His understanding reaches further than your experience. His timing is always on time, even when it feels late. And here's another hook that will challenge the way you look at waiting. What if the delay is actually building the kind of breakthrough that will outlast every struggle you faced? God doesn't give temporary blessings. He gives foundations that last. Sometimes He delays because He's upgrading the blessing into something bigger than what you prayed for. You asked for a door, but God is building you a gate. You prayed for opportunity, but God is preparing influence. You asked for a solution, but God is developing a testimony that will inspire others. Delays teach you trust. They teach you endurance. They teach you patience. They strip away desperation and replace it with confidence. They separate superficial faith from anchored faith. When everything in you wants to rush ahead, delay forces you to slow down long enough to build resilience, wisdom, and clarity. In that waiting space, distractions fall away, motives get purified, and your focus sharpens. Delay doesn't weaken you, it fortifies you. It molds your character to match the magnitude of the blessing. And don't overlook this, delays create divine intersections. You might think you're stuck, but God may be orchestrating someone else's journey to cross paths with yours at the exact right moment. He may be moving someone into position who will open the door you've been praying about. He may be shifting circumstances in your favor that would not have existed if you arrived too early. God is not just working on your blessing. He is working all things together so the blessing arrives wrapped in purpose, protected by timing, and anchored in destiny. A blessing given too soon becomes a burden. A blessing released too late becomes a regret. But a blessing delivered on God's timing becomes a legacy. So when delay shows up, don't interpret it as silence. Don't interpret it as rejection. Don't interpret it as abandonment. Interpret it as divine timing adjusting the world around you so that your moment doesn't just happen. Your moment hits with purpose, power, and precision. Every time you open your mouth in prayer, you are declaring war on everything that has tried to stop you, silence you, or steal your hope. Your faith-filled prayers are not quiet gestures, they are spiritual announcements. They proclaim to every force of darkness, every whisper of discouragement, every seed of doubt, I will not quit, I will not bow, I will not break. Prayer is not just communication with God, it is confrontation with the enemy. It is the way you let hell know that no matter how long the delay, no matter how heavy the pressure, no matter how dark the season, you are still standing. And here's a hook that will ignite something fierce inside you. What if every prayer you pray is pushing back an enemy attack you didn't even know was targeting you? What if your persistence in prayer is the very thing stopping the enemy from advancing? What if the enemy's strategy isn't to defeat you, but to get you to stop praying so you defeat yourself? Because the enemy doesn't fear your strength, your talent, your connections, or your plans. He fears your prayers. He fears your boldness in the spirit. He fears your refusal to be silent. He fears your ability to call on a power greater than anything he can manufacture. When you pray, you activate a realm of authority the enemy cannot touch. Every prayer becomes a shield. Every prayer becomes a weapon. Every prayer becomes a declaration that you are not fighting alone. This is why prayer often feels hardest when you need it most. The enemy knows that if he can make you quiet, he can make you weak. If he can make you discouraged, he can make you distracted. If he can make you tired, he can make you silent. He doesn't need to steal your blessing. He just needs to silence your prayer long enough for you to walk away from it. But here's another hook that will flip your mindset. What if your strongest spiritual victories are waiting on the other side of the prayer you're tempted to stop praying? Think about it. The enemy never fights what doesn't threaten him. The intensity of your warfare is often the greatest evidence of the size of your destiny. If your prayer life has become a battlefield, it means your breakthrough is close enough to provoke resistance. Your prayers announce to the enemy that you know who you are. Your prayers announce that you refuse to crumble under pressure. Your prayers announce that you are aligned with heaven's agenda. Your prayers announce that you have not surrendered your faith. Prayer is the sound of spiritual defiance. It is you standing in the hallway of closed doors saying, I may not see it yet, but I still believe. I may not feel it yet, but I still trust. I may not understand it yet, but I'm not backing down. The enemy thrives on intimidation, but prayer is intimidation turned back on him. Prayer tells him you're not intimidated by delays. You're not shaken by silence. You're not threatened by obstacles. You're grounded in a power he cannot defeat. And don't miss this. The enemy can block opportunities, but he cannot block prayer. He can stir confusion around you, but he cannot interfere with the conversation between you and God. He can create noise to distract you, but he cannot override the authority you have when you pray with boldness and faith. Prayer bypasses every barrier, every lie, every trap, every scheme designed to hinder your progress. It reaches the throne of God untouched, pure, undiluted, unstoppable. Every time you pray, you reclaim territory. You regain focus. You realign your spirit. You recover strength. You recalibrate your heart. You remind the enemy that you will not be manipulated by fear, controlled by delay, or weakened by adversity. You rise up stronger. You rise up braver. You rise up louder. So when the pressure increases, pray louder. When the enemy whispers lies, pray stronger. When discouragement hits, pray deeper. When doubt creeps in, pray longer. Because prayer is not just communication. Prayer is confrontation. And with every prayer, you send a message into the spiritual realm that cannot be ignored. I will not quit. I will not fold. I will not step back. I will keep praying because breakthrough belongs to those who refuse to be silent. When God opens a door, it is never small, never ordinary, never something you could have forced on your own. When God opens a door, it carries the weight of his power, the timing of his wisdom, and the abundance of his favor. You can push, you can knock, you can strategize, you can try everything in your strength. But the door God opens will always exceed anything you could have achieved by hustle, pressure, or human effort. It will be bigger, wider, safer, and more supernatural than what you were reaching for. What you call a blessing, God calls the beginning. What you call an opportunity, God calls a doorway into destiny. There are doors you wanted that God never opened because they were too small for the calling on your life. There are doors you cried over because they shut before you could enter, not realizing they would have capped your growth, limited your influence, or held you hostage to a life beneath your potential. But when God opens a door, it always lines up with your purpose, your identity, and the path he prepared long before you even knew what to pray for. Here's a hook that will shift something deep inside you. What if God hasn't opened the door yet because the one he's preparing is far greater than the one you're praying for? What if you are praying for access while God is preparing expansion? What if you are asking for an opportunity while God is building a future? What if the door you wanted was just an entry point, but the door God is planning is a destiny-shifting turning point? Because when God opens a door, it doesn't just bless you, it elevates you. It doesn't just give you something, it transforms you into someone. It doesn't just change your season, it establishes a new level of authority, influence, and impact. God doesn't open doors that lead nowhere. He opens doors that carry purpose. And here's another hook that should stir your faith. What if the delay you're experiencing is because God is reinforcing the door so that when it opens, no one, not people, not circumstances, not the enemy, can shut it? Some doors need time because God is securing them. Some doors need time because God is enlarging them. Some doors need time because God is preparing the right people on the other side. Some doors need time because God is removing the wrong ones. God is meticulous with his timing. He will not open a door just because you're tired of waiting. He opens it when everything connected to your future is aligned for maximum impact. When God opens a door, you won't have to force it. You won't have to fight people for it. You won't have to compromise yourself to walk through it. The door will open with such clarity, such favor, such undeniable grace that you'll know it wasn't your power, it was your prayer. It wasn't your effort, it was his timing. It wasn't coincidence, it was intention. And here's something you must hold on to. The door God opens is often bigger than your preparation and greater than your expectation. You might step into rooms you didn't apply for, opportunities you didn't audition for, blessings you didn't earn, favor you didn't qualify for, breakthroughs you never imagined. Because God does not match your efforts. He matches his goodness, He doesn't open doors according to your limitations. He opens them according to his limitless power. And don't overlook this. The door God opens will not compete with other open doors. It will overshadow them. It will silence every doubt, reverse every disappointment, and rewrite your story. It will make you understand why all the other doors had to stay closed. It will confirm that every tear, every delay, every moment you thought nothing was happening was actually positioning you for something immeasurably greater. When God opens a door, you'll see that the waiting wasn't wasted. You'll realize that the preparation had purpose. You'll understand that the closed doors were necessary. Because the moment he opens the right door, everything that was confusing suddenly becomes clear. Everything that felt heavy becomes light. Everything that seemed delayed becomes right on time. You won't have to fight for it. You won't have to fear losing it. You won't have to question if it's yours. Because when God opens a door, it comes with peace, with purpose, and with the power to take you into a destiny only he could design.